But we are live also if you want to tune in on kdwradio.com or go to Facebook, and it's on WKDW 97.5 Facebook page. And so I wanted to invite Wayne Sallade in. He is, if you don't know Wayne Sallade, you don't know anybody. He is the king of Southwest Florida. And he has about 30,000 followers. So all of you millennials that wish for followers,
but let's not quibble over numbers.
And so we have invited him back in. Now, if you don't know, Wayne was 30 years as the director, about 35 years in the whole emergency operations game in Charlotte County, but about 50-year resident of Southwest Florida. So you've got some chops there, brother.
Well, before you keep on going on, Rich, and that's the only reason I'm up here, I wanted to tell people where they can watch the streaming right now. It's not just Facebook, WKDW, it's live with KDW Radio. It's on my own personal page. You can catch it on YouTube right now on WKDW, on Common Ground's Facebook page. You can also go to my personal YouTube and on Twitter on WKDW 97.5. So it is streaming on all of these places at this time. For everybody that wants to ask a question or give any kind of comment, you can post it under comments and the guys will be able to see you. So I'm off. Good show.
Okay. So maybe we could... Maybe we could convince, we could get an extra 30,000 viewers just by putting it on Wayne's page.
I hope she's not thinking about going to Disney World. I don't know if they've opened again yet or not.
Well, if they do that, then God bless them. But all right, so we are back talking about obviously the thing that is concerning Southwest Florida the most, and that is the aftermath of Hurricane Ian. And I will be honest with you, I have not checked the latest casualty numbers, but just when I was talking to Wayne prior to the show, you're going to probably see this death toll rise a little bit. I almost believe that from the very beginning, and Wayne, you can speak up anytime, when they're trying to rescue people, they're not really worried about recovery. And so a lot of times you go and you knock on the door. If you do not get any kind of response, you just move on.
If they find a body, they will remove it from the rubble. And if there are others nearby that need to be taken out of a place like a Pine Island or a Fort Myers Beach or an Arcadia, wherever, they will tag that body. It's called triage. And they will tag the body and note where it is, and they'll put a flag there and they'll go back. But barring any other people having to immediately be rescued or relocated, then they will bag the remains and remove them. Okay. And what happens, and it happened to me in Charlie early in the morning of August 14th, Saturday morning, the day after, I was called by the state and asked how many DMORT teams, that's a disaster mortuary team made up of medical examiners, morticians, and other professionals, along with an 18-wheeler that acts as a portable morgue and mortuary. And so I said to them, and the reason they called me was because our medical examiner at that time was in Pakistan visiting family and was not present. So I had to make the call, and I said, okay, send me 2 of those units. Having had the training, I knew each of those units was capable of handling the remains of 25 individuals. So when I asked for 2, people who found out what that involved immediately surmised that I had 50 bodies to deal with. No, was not the case at all. By the grace of God, we only had 4 in Charlie as a direct result of the hurricanes, uh, hitting our community.
Right.
But that's how stuff can get out of hand very quickly when people don't understand what it is you're trying to tell them about.
Well, and you were mentioning the fact that just prior, a lot of areas that we might not have known or got a huge amount of coverage flooded extremely bad from more fresh water flooding than it was storm surge flooding, especially parts of, Sarasota County and parts of DeSoto County and other counties, Highlands County. And you were mentioning that in, I believe, Arcadia, they found a car or a SUV that had driven off the road and probably was the best part of, buried or underwater. Once the water started to recede, they saw the thing, and there were 3 bodies in it, correct?
Yeah, that was in Hardy County, up
Hardy County.
near Wauchula. That whole stretch up there through what, again, we old timers, we call that the Heartland. And
Right.
Heartland is as you go up, you've got Arcadia, you got Zolfo Springs, Wauchula, and then you go on up, you get up into, Polk County, and where they had a tragedy this morning. And early this morning, a 21-year-old deputy was gunned down as they tried to serve a warrant. And I noticed that their sheriff, Grady Judd, who's one of my heroes, immediately, of course, left Fort Myers. He had been down there with Sheriff Marcino, but he went back to take care of that situation. Just a horrific situation for them. But anyway, continuing on that US 17, you had Mulberry, and all those little communities going up there, and they all got hammered. And DeSoto County, I don't know how long it'll be before that water begins to recede out of there. Something that struck me, Rich, I was thinking back to the hurricane's onslaught last Wednesday, and I thought about the fact that not a lot of Northport had been ordered to evacuate. I know the A zone we talked about, which is on the basically the south side of 41 as it
Right.
runs the west through Northport. The south side was ordered to evacuate, and now it's all the way up to I-75 and beyond into the estates. We knew that was coming. We knew it was coming based on the amount of water that was coming downriver in the Mayaca. And you hate to say this now, but a lot of those people should have been ordered to evacuate, knowing they were going to be isolated in their homes. And now that's what the rescuers are facing, is trying to get to those folks that have been cut off now for 6 days, 5 or 6 days since the waters came up and the roads got covered, and their homes were surrounded. So, yeah, it's become a multitude of issues for
Right.
all the communities of Southwest Florida.
Well, I will tell you, from being here so long, and it has seemed to have been better in the last year or so. But even during Irma, that area of Northport flooded, and there's been times where we've had literally 5 to 10 inches of rain because of a front that'll come through or something, and we had flooding out there. And, unfortunately, it wasn't such that it was going into people's houses. It was such that you just couldn't go anywhere. And so that water is like getting dammed up by I-75.
Well,
Go ahead.
They've talked about, I know I've heard the governor say we've had so many 500-year floods. Well, back in the day in Charlotte County, we had 2 500-year level floods in a 4-day span. We had 500-day flood on a Thursday and a 500-day flood which was about, each of those rainfall events was over 10 inches.
Right.
Much of Port Charlotte was completely underwater, and it took a while to drain that out. I don't know if I told you about the rain out here. We get, when it rains, like if we get a quarter of an inch, everybody is apoplectic, and I mean, it's like, oh my God, we had a quarter of an inch of rain today, and I'm like, excuse me. You know, I can remember one time we had 6 inches in 2 hours in Punta Gorda, and all of downtown was flooded, because once it starts to flood, there's no place for it to go,
Right.
because it's not flowing into the river. So
Right. Well, so we literally have had issues in the recent past where we've had that, and you and I talked last week that it wasn't only this hit on Wednesday of last week. The Friday before, this area was under a river flood warning, and
right,
for the Myakka River, the Myakkahatchee Creek, you had the Peace River. Because the rainy season in Florida dumps a ton of rain, and so you mentioned, and I don't think you coined the word, but you coined it in a lot of people's minds, of sheet flow. So whenever we had 15 to 19 inches of rain on Wednesday, there wasn't any ground to soak that up. It just basically stayed on the very top of the ground. And it was, basically nowhere in the rivers to go because it was nearly at flood stage. And it just flowed. And, it's going to get hit some obstructions. It's going to go through swampland. So it's not going to run at 30 miles an hour. And that's why it took 3 and 4 days for it to get here.
well, and then what happens, you get those situations like they've got at Sumter Boulevard. And Sumter Boulevard becomes a canal underneath
Right.
I-75, because I-75, when it was constructed, I don't know, I apologize, I don't remember when you came to the area, but when they built I-75, they brought thousands upon thousands of truckloads of dirt to build that interstate bed up. Now it's a giant dike, and it
Yes.
holds the water which runs to those openings. Quite frankly, I'm surprised that that Toledo Blade is not cut off. But it's a little bit different topography, little different scenario.
Right.
But it makes all the sense in the world that water would come to that opening of Sumter and then run down to the south towards the Northport community.
A lot of people, it wasn't 4 or 5 years ago, 6 years ago, whatever, that they widened I-75 to 3 lanes in that area. And it was almost a joke because, there are maybe 2 openings of I-75 where they have these little culverts underneath to let, the flow of what people need to understand, okay?
Florida's watershed.
Well, Florida's watershed.
Yeah.
So basically anything that is not going to flow into the Peace River or the Manatee River that is north of us for about 70, 80 miles, 70 or 80 miles. Imagine the landmass there. Anything that is falling on that is typically in some way, shape, or form going to make it down through Northport and the Myakka River. So, whenever you're at basic flood stage, you're doing sheet flow, and you've got 18 inches of rain that fell on that 80 miles, maybe 80 square miles of area. I mean, holy cow. It is unbelievable the amount of rain that was coming down there, and we are facing it. And, I will tell you that we've got the Cajun Navy down here. We got the National Guard. We have FEMA. We have a lot of people down here. And, I'll just tell you, just from people reporting back to me, I'm up in Franklin. I'm out of it. So people report to me because, again, radio is basically that, and social media is the only thing they have. A lot of them do not have electricity yet in Northport. We are 7 days out from that storm. And they might not get it back for a few more days. Water is a boil water deal. So, I mean, if you don't have electric, how do you boil your water? Well, they're going to have to find a way. But, it's still a situation. We have quite a few of the areas that have distribution centers. So, FEMA and all of the organizations that are distributing food along 41 and into Charlotte County. I mean, it's great all the way up into Sarasota. The issue is with a lot of Northport residents is they can't get out of their house to go get it. So, distribution centers that aren't pulling up in front of their house in a big, airboat is basically distribution they'll never get. And so I do believe, I mean, we've had this with a few storms now. We need to start seeing some kind, I mean, with our explosive growth, I mean, we're up to 82,000 people living in Northport. Why they did not, that's a good question. I think it's a situation where it has flooded so many times in the recent past that they just say, okay, it's another deal. And I will tell you that there are reports, Wayne, and this is the sad part. There are reports of looting out in the estates. And so, people say, well, I'm not, I didn't sustain that much, hurricane damage. I can live in my house. I just can't go anywhere. I can't get any supplies, but I'm not going to get rid of leave my house and hopefully have some, or not hope somebody doesn't come in and steal everything. And there are reports of people in canoes, kayaks, other boats that are floating up into this area. I mean, it's huge area. It is an absolutely huge area. And they're going up into people that have left. And then there are places that are so undense or lack of density. That you might not have a neighbor for a quarter mile.
Yeah.
So people are saying, well, if I don't see lights on, I don't see any movement around there, I guess it's free to go. Well, you do that at your own risk, because I guarantee you there's people out there that really do believe in the Second Amendment.
Well, and sadly enough, Rich, I'd like to see a couple of those incidents occur. I'd like to see some looters that, are left to be retrieved later. And then that sends a message that it's not going to be tolerated.
Right.
I know a lot of places have put on their spray painted, "You loot, we shoot." The sheriff of Lee County said, "You might go in, but you might be carried out." And those are messages that have to be said. This is intolerable. That people would, and it's always that way, Rich. People prey on the unfortunate, those that have been knocked down, and they figure, well, I'm going to go in and take advantage of them. And it's no different than a scam roofer that comes up and says, "I can fix your roof. Give me half the money now, and we'll go ahead and get it done." And then they disappear.
Right.
And you can't do that. As desperate as you are to have something done and to have help, you just can't go with a fly-by-night contractor. It's I know it's a hard thing to tell people, but it's a tough lesson to learn if you've been victimized.
Well, and I really did want to talk at length about this, because I think this is now that we are in the recovery phase of this storm. We do still have people being rescued, and they are going to start finding more bodies probably. So don't be surprised at that. I understand there's been 5 deaths that are being investigated in Northport from this storm, and we'll see if they have or do put that to the list of 102. Now CNN is reporting online that the death count is, as of 3 hours ago, so about 12 o'clock Eastern time, at 102.
You watch CNN, huh?
No, I don't. It's on. It's easy. It's easy to scroll, and you search death toll
I'm just
Ian,
kidding.
and that's the first thing that came up.
I'm just kidding.
No, I mean, I don't watch it, but regardless of the fact, I don't watch a lot of Fox either. So anyway, couple of things. You mentioned about looters. The Northport Police put out a post today that they have police officers stationed at every gas station in Northport. Now, I don't know how many that is. I don't think they really told us. They said anywhere that has gas. So how many have gas? I don't know. But that is manpower that they are using for ridiculous reasons because people are getting hyper. And I guess there was a report, whether you've heard it outside in Colorado or not, there were people shot and stabbed in Inglewood at gas stations.
Is that right? I had not heard that.
Well, and again, I don't necessarily know I trust it, but what it does tell me is it must have some I don't know that people died or not. Okay.
Sad.
Oh wow. I'll talk about that here in a second. So they are putting police presence at every gas station because people are getting upset, and they're starting fights, and let's hope they're not pulling guns and everything. But there's reports that has happened. So instead of being able to deliver goods to people, instead of being able to protect people, instead of being able to go take manage the looting, they're having to do things that we as adults should be doing, behaving ourselves and not getting frustrated. I understand this is a frustrating situation, but how is hurting somebody because they get 5 gallons of gas before you do going to help your life?
Right. I also know, Rich, that something that is beginning to take place as more and more counties to the north of you in Florida, as they begin to stabilize things and get a handle on what they went through. I mean, I have to point out, and a lot of people down there don't know what happened up in Volusia, which is Daytona Beach,
right?
Kissimmee, which is Osceola, Orange County, all those places absolutely got pounded with rain and flooded because of it. They've lost thousands of cars. They've had many homes with floodwaters in them. But as they stabilize, they will be sending resources, including additional law enforcement, down to the impacted zone. And you're going to see a lot more law enforcement presence and maybe military presence as the days roll on. Again, this isn't. This is one of America's great natural disasters.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all I can tell you. It is one of the great disasters. And I'm not sure that it will eclipse Andrew in the number of lost homes, but I'm fearful that it will. And that was 83,000, by the way, homes that were lost on August 24th of 1992. So, again, we lost 11,000 in Charlie, just in Charlotte County. And their numbers aren't going to be, anywhere near that because of the rebuild after Charlie and the strengthening of so many homes. Most common thing I've heard is, and I know it's an addition to your house, but it's certainly part of your lifestyle, and that's your pool cage.
Right.
Folks, I don't know what to tell you, but I fear you're looking at a couple 100,000 pool cages. I haven't talked to hardly anybody that owns a pool that their cage did not collapse.
And no, so our stint.
Marie's didn't. Okay, everybody.
And we were getting 150 some miles.
When she gets home, y'all go swim at Marie's house. Look that up and go swim at Marie's.
Well, we rebuilt after Charlie too, and we had extra things in the screen. It was actually in there good. So
right. Okay. Well, she had to make. There you go. All right. So let's get back to the subject of contractors. You lost 11,000. There's not enough contractors in Charlotte County or surrounding counties to repair 11,000 homes in a week, right?
Well, one of the blessings, and I think you might find this out, of course, even in Northport. If you talk about places like Harbor Cove and some of those other large parks up War Mineral Springs, what have you, their occupancy rate when this storm hit was probably significantly below 50%. Thank God. If hurricane season, Rich, corresponded with tourist season, oh my God. I mean, think about the Fort Myers Beach or those other tourist, Sanibel, those tourist locations, Sanibel, filled with German tourists during the season who come there. And it's the number one tourist destination in the world for German citizens. And they'd have been all over that place probably in about another month.
And they might not have understood English. Get out of while you can.
Well, Lee County. Listen, Lee County Emergency Management was the first emergency management office anywhere in the United States that printed their hurricane brochures, their hurricane guides in German.
Yeah. That's true. And Northport, we do Russian. We have such a large Ukrainian Russian population.
By the church, I've been there. I've gone up there and bought pierogies. I know exactly what you're talking about. They're Ukrainian. A lot of Ukrainians there in the Northport area.
Exactly.
Yeah. Ukrainian
so let's get
Universalist Church.
I want to protect people. And, last night we did about a 2.5 hour broadcast, me and Marie and John and others. And one of the things that John Rawlings had told us is he didn't join us right at the beginning. And he said he was dealing with a roofer. And so his friend that he's been kind of dealing with had contracted with a guy, and he came out of a roofing truck, and I don't know, whatever. And so the guy started doing work on the roof, and it soon became very obvious. And the thing is, he made his friend sign a contract. In that contract, he lost any negotiation rights. It literally took his contract with his insurance and gave it to the roofing company. And so any negotiations was between the roofing company and the insurance company. So they there and found out that the guy started from the top putting the paper down. And so the second layer was not covered. Third layer wasn't covered. The seam at the top, it would have allowed, water just to come flowing into his house. And so they questioned the guy and ended up finding out the guy's not a roofer.
Good.
He's not a roofer, not even a roofing contractor. He's not a roofer. He does not know the first thing about it. And I guess, I don't know how he got the truck. I didn't find that part out. What I'm basically referring this story to is there's a bunch of people like that out there. And,
they're everywhere. They're all over.
And you're not going to have enough roofers. I mean, I do have roofers as contractors, as clients, and they told me before they're out till they're out till November, December now, before the storm.
Yeah.
Now you've got. Let's look at 11,000 homes.
Well,
I think it'll be more by the time you get Lee, Collier, Charlotte, and Sarasota County. But you're not going to have enough contractors to do that. But you run the risk of throwing your money away on worthless jobs that will come back to haunt you. I talked to one guy. Now, you tell me, you've been here. A contractor friend of mine, he went this morning to go put a blue tarp on a roof that had been replaced 7 years ago. And 7 years ago, they basically shingled over old shingles.
Oh, that's common, Rich. That's
illegal in Florida.
It's a common
It's illegal.
There's a lot of illegal things, but listen, mea culpa. My parents' house in Port Charlotte, 25, 30, no, it had to be more than that. Yeah, but we did that at their house because the roof was in decent condition. We made sure the roof decking was good, was solid, and we re-roofed my mother's whole house. And would you believe it stood up in Charlie?
Okay.
And
well,
so, but yeah,
you know,
no, it's done.
It doesn't match code now.
I
And
know.
so I don't think it matched code 7 years ago. And it
understand.
surely does not match code now. But, you know, the problem is that's because we're in a hurricane area. And he specifically said that's not allowed in a hurricane area. So you might be getting people from Pennsylvania coming down. You might be getting people from Ohio. Those places might do that. But guess what? It is not allowed here. And you need to be very, very concerned about getting people outside of your area, or you've basically thrown your money away. And can I just say also, just for people that are covered with a hurricane policy, I was lucky. I switched my insurance this year because my insurance company was leaving the state of Florida. I got a 2% hurricane deductible. That's very rare, what I'm being told. Typically, it's 5%.
Right.
And so 5% of $30,000 is still $6,000. I don't know, what is it? 5%? No, it's $1,500 that you would have had to come out of pocket if it's $30,000 to do your roof.
Yeah.
How many people can afford just to throw $1,500 away?
Well, I have a friend, a dear friend of mine. He's with FEMA now. He works for FEMA in Kansas City. And he's been up to his eyeballs in working Midwest disasters, floods that have occurred. His folks live in East Englewood, and they just got home and found out that their house was okay, had a spot on the ceiling in the master bedroom, but it had not soaked through, it hadn't dripped, there was no water in the house. So what pretty much happened there, I'm sure, is that their shingles got lifted up and the water was driven in or underneath the soffits, which were gone. It took the soffits, it lifts them up and then pulls them back down again. But 2 doors down from their house, the house was condemned, was red flagged. And so that's the disparity between homes on the same street, built in the same era. These were both 70s era, late 70s, early 80s era homes. How do I know that for sure? Because I did the appraisals on those homes when they were built. When I was in the appraiser's office in the early part of my government career before I switched to the fun and games of emergency management.
Okay, so just real quick, do you see any evidence of anything else creeping up our backside this hurricane season?
No. Well, this season, gosh, Rich, I think I told you the other day that, I mean, you go back during my time in the field, 1985, I was the public information officer for Charlotte County, emergency management, public safety. And we had a storm come into the Gulf of Mexico the week of Thanksgiving. Her name was Kate. She was a Category 3. Now, fortunately, the Gulf was beginning to cool off, and when she got up to the north end of the Gulf of Mexico, she had dropped down to a 1, but still had winds in excess of 90 miles an hour and absolutely clobbered Tallahassee with tree falls and whatnot. They had no electricity. Well, suffice to say, there were a lot of cold turkeys that Thanksgiving up there. So hurricane season, you know, if you look on my Facebook page, you'll see they ask you about quotes. Well, the quote on my Facebook page has been and always will be Yogi Berra's "It ain't over till it's over."
It ain't over till
And
it's over.
and in 2005, those that might remember that were with us, hurricane season did not end until January of 2006. The last storm formed the final week of December and carried over into, I mean, it's crazy. It's
Right.
crazy. And
Well, we
so
noticed during when we talked, we were looking at when we first started discussing this, a possible, Big Bend area landfall,
landfall,
and
right.
they were talking about it
For a
switching
couple of
down to a
days,
one.
for a couple of days, it
Yeah,
looked like it was going to be somewhere between, let's say, Apalachicola in the Panhandle and Cedar Key,
right.
somewhere in that zone. Almost, I mean, for me, looking at the models, and the models were insistent that that's where it was going to go until a couple days before, and then the European stuck to its guns and said, Southwest Florida coast. And by
Right.
God, it was right. Now, the GFS, the Global Forecasting System,
What?
which is the American model, did jump on the bandwagon with the euro near the last hours and said, "Yeah, we're buying this." But
Well,
all this,
and
listen,
let me ask you this as a weather guru and a person that is very well knowledged on. Do you guys sit there and say, okay, we've got 14 models sitting out there? The European kind of was right on the money and has been a lot of times. So do you kind of, without letting every other person know, I'm kind of looking at the European model here,
they will. You know what? I never did. Because I don't believe in hanging your hat on one model.
right?
There are some extraordinary operational models, and some of them are, popular word these days is hybrid, a hybrid. And there are a number of models that even perform better than the euro, but they're not known because they're not global models. The European model and the GFS, the global forecast system, well, it's called global for a reason. You can go look at any place on the face of the earth and get a read for what it thinks the weather is going to be. The rest of the models are specifically hurricane models,
Okay.
and they are designed and tweaked to be used with the parameters of a hurricane and the current atmospheric conditions. And some of the models, in fact, there's one, and it's actually called the FSU model that takes seven, I believe it's seven models, puts them together, and comes up with a forecast. And that thing has many, many, many times been the winner. So no, you can't just, it gives you pause, let's put it that way, when that model insists on your back door.
Right.
You want to wish and hope that it's going to be the other one, and then unfortunately reality sets in. But I'd like to address this whole controversy that's popped up about media entities jumping on Lee County for being too late to make a call. They made a call in plenty of time. It's the people who chose not to leave who have created massive problems. These people sitting on Pine Island, they said, well, what's your biggest problem? Oh, we're not getting any help. Well, you know what? It's your fault. You didn't leave. You were told to leave. You could have gotten to high ground. You could have gone to upper Cape Coral, which had no flooding. Yes, they had the winds, but you go over there and you hang out at the superstore or whatever, and ride it out. But these people, old Florida crackers, and I've been in Matlacha for 85 years, and this ain't never happened. Well, now it did,
Right.
and I'm just a little sick of hearing all this criticism that Lee County didn't do this and Lee County didn't do that. There might not be a better emergency management agency in Florida. and that includes the one I left, because Lee County has always been a leader, and I don't think that they were slow on the uptake. I think, little after Charlotte, but Charlotte looked like a much higher risk and vulnerability until the last, no, I don't know, not too many hours.
Right.
And hurricane forecasting, let's be honest, it is so much better than it was 10 years ago, and much better than it was 10 years before that, and so on. They have made such tremendous advances, but it ain't perfect. Hurricane science, hurricane forecasting is a deadgum crapshoot. They might as well take a dart and throw it at a board, but they've narrowed that cone. But that cone is God, man. That cone says you're going to get hurricane conditions. And when
Right.
it does, and your town, your home is in there, you better take it as gospel.
Well,
And
and
so,
I would like to just mention also, because, it's not cheap to sit there and call for an evacuation. Typically, when you
oh,
do,
it's
you have to open
extraordinary.
up something, but also for people. So you sit there and say, listen, you need to evacuate. A lot of people do not want to go and spend the next 6 to 10 days possibly with every other person in the world. So they're going to want to go across the state, or they're going to get out of Florida, whatever it is. And the problem a lot of people don't understand is that might happen 3 or 4 times in a summer with Florida in different parts. And people start saying, evacuate. Why? It never hits me. And so they kind of tune it out. You got to understand, when you sit there and are told there's a good chance. Oh, how good a chance? It could be a 50% chance, but do you want to take that chance? Yeah, I'll take that chance. Or 70%. Yeah, it's never hit me, like the people at Matt Lachey. It's never done that. I'll just sit here. And you start getting a callous when you hear that. You gotta evacuate. Now, the same way you mentioned the fact that you kind of wish somebody would have let these looters know that they mean business. I think now and a lot of people are saying this is the worst decision I ever made.
Well, yeah, and
But
it's
20
sad
years
that,
from now, how long ago was Charlie? 20 years ago, basically. How
well,
long,
here's
20 years from now, those same people aren't going to be here, and they will have faced 20 years of maybe once or twice a year being told they need to evacuate.
but here's the deal, Rich. Your population in Southwest Florida has a higher turnover rate. Let's cut to the chase. That region has the highest death rate in the United States. No question. More people pass away there. That's why funeral homes are so lucrative. More people end up passing away there than any place else in the country, percentage wise. Well, when they go to their reward, guess what? They're backfilled by somebody else that wants to come in, who comes from someplace, and I've said it before and I'll continue to say it, they don't know hurricanes from hemorrhoids. And so they're uneducated. They don't avail themselves of hurricane seminars that are given frequently by emergency managers, and they immediately will go and talk to their neighbors. Have you had a hurricane here? And mostly people will say, well, Charlie hit Charlotte County and blah, 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 blah. And Irma came up through here, but she stayed inland and really didn't give us any. So we've been pretty well off. And Sarasota County is a very good example.
Yes.
For decades, I've heard this nonsense about Indian mounds and witches and their incantations on those barrier islands. Well, what happened? Did they evacuate? I mean, why didn't they stay there and protect those folks? There's no magic bullet. You live in a high hazard coastal environment, and an area that has long been designated as the most difficult to evacuate in the United States of America. And if that had been Now let's talk about this for a minute. Let's say Ian was a Cat 5 coming off Cuba. Okay. Let's say Ian had 185-mile-per-hour winds. Do you know what the evacuation time would have been for Southwest Florida? 96 hours when they had less than 48 left before he got there. The numbers, you can't put that square peg in a round hole. It does not work. I've tried it
Right.
since I was 3 years old, and I learned real quick, I ain't going to fit.
And would
So
you admit that?
people have to evacuate. In many cases, they have to have triggers that they learn that they will put in place. It's called spontaneous evacuation. Now, these are people who have the means more so than those that you mentioned that don't. But you know what? I don't buy that. I don't have the money to evacuate. If you lived in a red or orange zone, okay, which means you're below, let's say you're below 12 feet, okay? And the lowest homes, by the way, are, I had a couple in West County that basically sat 4.5 feet above sea level, okay? But if you were at 4 to say 12 feet, okay, your life was at risk. Why can't you learn of someone that's a friend, a work acquaintance, someone from your church or synagogue, someone from a civic organization you're in? You got to know somebody that lives in the yellow or green areas, and you go stay with them for a short while. You don't need to go to places like North Carolina. You don't have to do that. You don't have to be many states away. I mean, I've had people saying, I'm in Mississippi, I'm in North Georgia, I'm in Kentucky, I'm in. Why? Well, because they just didn't want to be there. Well, you
Right.
know what? If you don't want to be there, move. Don't go back
Right.
because it's
Well,
not.
and I will just say this for a lot of people, especially in Northport. Northport has always been kind of known as the bedroom community for all the service oriented folks that serve Sarasota. So you have a lot of, and we can go into socioeconomic all day long. You have a lot of people that what they have in their house is the only thing they have at their house. And the food that they have at their house is the food that they have at their house. And they don't have any food outside. They, whatever it is. And their mindset is, I'm going to protect what is mine now. And thinking that, and I'll be honest with you, I live in a zone E. That's where my house is. I'm up in North Carolina because I'm up in North Carolina since 1st of June.
Right.
But I'm in zone E. That's where they put the shelters, in zone E.
Right.
There
Right.
are zone E's that are underwater right now.
When you have a zone E to put them in, Charlotte County's 4 shelters that they actually opened one. I don't know if you heard, they opened for the first time in history a shelter out at the Babcock community.
Yep.
Their new high school out there, their new community school. They opened the
That's 35 miles away from the most populated areas.
Yeah, and they opened it up, in their all-purpose room that they have. But nonetheless, the other shelters in Charlotte are in a C zone. Why? Because that's as high as the schools get in Charlotte County.
Yeah.
People they're always giving me a rash of crap about, well, you don't have enough shelters here. What's wrong with these people? And I'm like, excuse me, you want to build the schools 35 miles away from town and then have to foot the bill to drive kids by bus out to those schools all the time? Do you want to go to church Sunday morning 30 miles from home at a nice big mega church? No, you don't.
Right.
You've placed yourself in harm's way. Okay? You didn't get any brochures from the developer or from the Chamber of Commerce or anybody else saying, oh, by the way, you are moving into a high hazard coastal floodplain environment and it will go underwater in a bad hurricane. Nobody tells you that. That's for you to learn. And, is it paradise? Yeah, 99.9% of the time. But it's that 0.1% that makes your life a living hell for sometimes a very long time. Why do
Absolutely.
you think I live? Why do you think I now live a mile above sea level, Rich?
Because you know that it feels nice all year round up there,
Yeah,
right?
I won't even tell you what it is today.
What is it?
68.
Well, it's only about 69 degrees here in Franklin, North Carolina.
There you go. There you go. Yeah,
And you talk
exactly.
about not having big mountains here. I know you have 10, 11, 12, 13,000-foot mountains, but hey, 68,
14ers.
14ers? Hey, you
Yeah,
don't
that's
live
the
that far close to Pikes Peak, do you?
no, but I'm just telling you that's just south of us in the San Juan range, down between us and Durango. There are 5 14ers in the San Juans, a little over an hour from my front door.
Any
So.
Sasquatch? I'm gonna come out
No,
there and we're
I've
gonna
heard
hunt some
about him, but I haven't
Sasquatch.
seen him. I'm beginning to look like Sasquatch right here.
I know, me
And
too, brother.
I've got Rotary tomorrow. I got to clean up.
So when does school start back out there?
Oh, it's been in session.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Or been in session we started in August.
All right.
Yeah.
So the latest on this is for Sarasota County. North County is going to start on Monday. And they will start going back in session. South County is still indefinite, but they're hoping to get everything back by next Friday. I
Lee
don't know how
County
that works, and I don't know where the break off is. You
Lee
need to
County
check
had 49 schools compromised in one way, shape, or form.
Lee County.
49. 49. About 50% of their schools were compromised in one way or another. Yeah. So it's
This is going to be decades of getting back to.
oh yeah.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. I mean, for what you could control. Now, I understand businesses going out of business. If they decide not to come back into business after Hurricane Charlie, that's not your deal.
We had 800.
How long did it
800
take to get back to normal?
5 years.
5 years.
Yeah.
How much major? Go ahead.
To any semblance of recovery was 5 years. To completely to walk through because of vegetation, that's always a telltale sign. But to get to a point that there was almost you had to go hunting for scars, okay, was 10 years. Was 10 years.
Yeah.
At which point you still had, you know what the trick was? A lot of people, all they did, we talked earlier about roofs, okay? All they did was put new decking and new felt. They didn't put shingles. I mean, for a decade, these houses, and all you got to do is go, oh, Charlie, you know. So.
Wow. Is that because of the not available, or just didn't have the money
They didn't
to
have
do
the
it?
money. They didn't have the money. They needed a covering, and they'd put a covering on, and then they'd maybe have something sprayed on that would, help to
Repel water.
harden it a little bit or whatever. But and the count, I don't know. I wasn't deeply involved in my building department or community development, but they let that happen. And I used to ask. I'd say, "What what is this?" And we had we lost 25,000 roofs in Charlotte and 40,000 pool cages, which I can't wait to hear the number on pool cages. It's going to be astronomical. So,
well, I mentioned this last night, and I think I might have mentioned it with you. In fact, we're going to try to have Chris Mays with All About Aluminum on, if I can get him on sometime tonight, just as an extra broadcast. We're going to talk with contractors about the importance of not just signing your life away to people outside of the area, and to hire local if you can, and you should be able to. But regardless, he was telling me after Irma, it was well after over 2 years for lots of people in and that was really some of the only damage they had, and it was self-inflicted because they they would slice their screen so that they wouldn't lose their pool cage, right? And it was 2 years to get screening or more. Just wasn't enough screen in America.
Right, exactly. No, you're right. And so imagine with this one, what that's going to mean.
Yeah.
And but
prices are going to go up. It's just
little tip there for you. Slicing screens can save your cage.
Yeah.
But people, it's the last thing people want to do, Rich, because they know that it's going to be hard to get it back. But it's probably easier than having the whole thing fold over like an accordion, and that's what most of them did.
And that alone is probably a really good moneymaker now, because so many cages probably broke. If you're an aluminum collector, you're going to make a mint right now. I will mention this. Charlotte County, I think, is Wednesday. I do know Northport is Wednesday. They're going to start their normal garbage pickup.
Correct. That's what they're saying.
It will basically be, if you get it on Wednesday normally, that's what it'll be. But I will also tell you, I know Northport is saying they would like you to separate all your debris into piles. So like vegetation, if you've got white goods, which are basically appliances, if you've got roofing material in one, and then aluminum or metal in another. So if you have all those all together, they might not pick it up right away.
They might not. They ask you to pre-sort. Yeah.
Right. So if you can make an effort to do that, get your piles in order, and then your normal garbage, if you're a Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, you'll get it on Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, as long as they can get to you. I will just say that. So.
And one of the sad realities of that whole debris thing, Rich, is that all that stuff that can't be burned, and much of it will be incinerated using what's called a curtain burner. Or they also might use the big tube incinerators, but they bring that stuff in and they put it in there, and it disappears. Now they have to get a waiver from the EPA and all that, but they do. And then the other thing they do is they turn as much of the vegetative debris as they can into mulch, giant piles of mulch. But all of the construction debris, that goes in your county landfill. And my God, I can't even imagine how many years this is going to take up in the landfills of Collier, Lee, Charlotte, and Sarasota. It's going to be a nightmare.
I want to ask you something, because I know you've probably had to deal with it. All these boats, I mean, you go down to Lee County, and I know they lost probably 11,000, 20,000 boats.
Oh, I guess.
They're just piled up on top of piled up. What did they do with all that?
Well, a lot of them can be salvaged for parts.
Okay.
A lot of them, remember, Rich, they spend their life on the water. So they're made to, but as long as something is salvageable, they will, it's like decommissioning a battleship. Most of a battleship, which I know they used to decommission them in Philadelphia, at the Philadelphia Navy Yard, and at Mayport up in Jacksonville. But when they do that, they take most of that and they recycle it. And I think with boats, you're going to see a lot of that same thing being done. And some are can be repaired. Remember, in a lot of cases, those boats were floated up on top of others, and so once they can get in there and can get barges that have cranes on them, they can start to pick those boats off, and then the owners can decide what they want to do with those watercraft. But all the boats you see that were maybe even sunk in some cases, many of them are recoverable. So
now I have a cousin that used to be in the boat insurance business, and he said he made the comment that majority of those will be basically totaled if they've been sunk, because and so I guess the salvage business will be big. You go and buy them from the insurance company because they will have paid the owner, and they'll sell it for something and then maybe refurbish and repair. So,
the other thing people need to watch out for is cars that have been through a flood.
yes,
Just because you can't see it, car could have been in 4 feet of water, and they can clean those things up, refurbish them. But I'm telling you, that vehicle will never ever be the same.
the
So
electronics are just basically cooked,
yeah,
or
be
will
ever
be.
cautious. Yeah,
Yeah.
be ever cautious of that. So,
All right. So,
all right.
Wayne, I just wanted to say thank you if you've been listening. We came on a little late because we couldn't get streaming on our radio, but we've also been talking here on the various streaming apps that Marie had mentioned earlier. We will come back on as many times as you are, because I will tell you, people love seeing Wayne Sallade. He's like the king. He's
Will you
sitting on his
stop?
throne out there
I,
in Colorado.
I wish people would stop with the, I never, when I took this job in 1987, I
Right.
think I told you, I took it and I told the committee, I said, I'm going to take this job because if I'm going to live here and raise my family, which I did, 4 children, I want me to do this job instead of someone else, because I love this community and I love
Right.
the people. And I feel like they've been terribly underserved by what they had at the time. So I spent 30 years building a culture of preparedness, building a mindset that we are not immune to these disasters. And then, my team, my team showed their mettle in Charlie and worked tirelessly to get that community back on their feet. And the people that have replaced myself, well, actually replaced Jerry Mallett, who was the director, lived in Northport, Charlotte's director. He lived over in Bobcat. But Patrick Fuller and his team, they're tops. They are tops, and they're doing everything they can to get help to you, and to return you. That's our goal. That's what we do. Emergency management is 4 phases, Rich.
Right.
It's preparedness, okay, getting ready, response, getting out there, okay, recovery, and mitigation, which means doing something so it won't be as bad the next time.
Right.
A metal roof is an example of mitigation, but there's those are the 4 phases. Right now, they are moving from response over to recovery in Charlotte. They're still in a responding phase in Lee. They're not recovery. Yeah, with materials and stuff, but there's nothing being done. Our ultimate goal in emergency management, no matter what the disaster, is to return a community to its pre-disaster condition. That's the mission, and it sometimes takes a very long time.
I mean, a decade. I don't know that Northport's going to be back anytime soon. But I sure hope they people give it a chance and just have the patience. Sarasota, basically, my friends went out to Venice. Venice is open and running like it normally did. So, you'll see Inglewood, Rotunda, Northport. I meant to ask you this. I'm hearing so many people, and I didn't experience. So Northport was probably in one of, for just sheer length of time impacted by the storm. It never entered into the eye of the storm.
Right.
And it literally was in the top portion. It sneaked down the left-hand side of the storm in the backside, but some of those winds were still 140, 150 miles an hour for almost 10 hours. Now, you
Some
got to
some were
understand,
12. Some were
yeah.
12 hours.
And let me tell you something. I mean, a hurricane, like Charlie, you mentioned, it was over in an hour. You had to deal with the aftermath, but the sheer fear only lasted about an hour.
Rich,
Okay.
imagine Hurricane Francis back in 2004 came in over Martin and St. Lucie counties on the east coast of Florida.
Right.
Francis slowed down to between 0 and 2 miles per hour forward speed. The eye of Francis was 40 miles across. 40. We'll do the math, Rich. Some parts of those communities were in the eye of Hurricane Francis for 24 hours.
Right.
And then the
Well,
vengeance of
and
the
the eye of the
backside.
storm is not the bad part of the storm.
No, but
Now you
you
have to
think it's
face two sides of it. I
correct.
granted,
It's two
but
storms for the price of one.
but please understand, 10 to 12 hours of 150 mile an hour, 130 mile an hour. You know, you think of the Fuji scale on a tornado. 130 mile an hour tornado is a pretty severe tornado.
And it
150 mile an hour tornado is a pretty severe tornado.
And it lasts about a minute.
Mm-hmm. These people were hearing the worst sounds they had ever heard in their life. They were huddled down saying, when is this going to stop? Oh, please, this has got to stop. And you're talking 10, 12 hours.
Yes.
That people were suffering from this. There's going to be PTSD on this, I guarantee.
Charlie lasted, the worst part of Charlie lasted 15 minutes in Charlotte. Yeah.
So when you sit there and you have people saying, oh, you didn't get into the eye. No, it was actually worse.
It is worse.
It took a little turn to the east right as it was coming to Northport, and it just jaunted Northport all the way down the backside of the storm after having already been in the top right-hand side of the storm. It literally, I mean, I know there's a lot of people going to say, no mas, you know, I can't handle this kind of stuff.
Yeah. No,
10,
you're
12
right.
hours in that kind of storm is ridiculous.
Well, look who came back. She must have gone to lunch.
Well,
I can tell. I can tell she's just finishing lunch, and that must be nice. Haven't had lunch. It's okay.
You can see I'm muted. I can do that. The reason I came back on is because you two didn't experience it, but we were in that eye wall. I mean, we were in Zone B, and we should have evacuated, and we were looking, and we kept on watching where it was going, and we didn't know where to go. We originally were booking in Sebring area because it was supposed to go a different way, and then we were looking over at West Palm Beach, and then tornadoes were spewing up, and they're telling you to stay off the roads.
Yeah. So that's another thing that I haven't heard it yet, and I'm quite frankly I'm shocked. So many people took my advice and went over on State Road 70 and State Road, other roads that go across the states. 80 is another one over to 27. But they went to places like West Palm Beach and Stewart and, Port St. Lucie and all that, Fort Pierce. And then I started seeing tornadoes up and down that 95 corridor. And I told my wife, I said, mark my words, some poor SOB that evacuates Southwest Florida is going to get killed in a tornado on the East Coast, because it almost never fails. Because those outer bands, now they're very fast moving, and these are very, very quick tornadoes. I'm talking about less than a minute, and generally small. They're not the big, what we call, long track tornadoes. They don't last long, but they're enough to flip over airplanes at an airport in North Broward County and do other things. But it's just part of the package of a hurricane. It goes with the territory.
Listen, there was a video. I don't know if anybody saw it, but Trish and I were sitting here watching, and there was a video of an airplane that was in a person's garage, and it wasn't a fly-in community, so it wasn't like he was building it. And the nearest airport was like 3 miles away. So that wind picked that thing up and somehow flew it itself, and it landed in somebody's garage.
Well, that's pretty cool because, possession is 9/10 of the law. So that guy just picked up a plane. I love it.
Absolutely. Wayne, when you were saying, though, about a home and that, and a suggestion that I have to people that are going to rebuild after this, get the metal roof. For one thing, with your insurance policy, it's not under the same restrictions as you are with a shingle roof. They told us we're good for ever, pretty much with it. And then also invest in the hurricane windows and the hurricane shutters. You'll be amazed how much that saves. And then have the different wiring put on your pool cages. It may cost you a little bit more, but truthfully, the only damage we really suffered was some soffit in our fencing. And we have a lot of fencing because we have 2 lots with it all around.
Yeah, you did it right. You did it right.
But that's because of you, Wayne, because I was involved with you guys, in that. I know, stop it, but stop.
Well, listen, I mean, I had invested in the accordion shutters here back in this May, actually March, and through Elite Hurricane Home Protection out of Northport. I'll just give them a harmless little plug there. But let me tell you something. I'm hearing reports now from people that, they had the regular metal shutters that they had to install during the hurricane, but they didn't have one for their front door. And so they were there literally having to hold the front door for 4 and 5 hours during this in Northport, because if you breach that one place, your house is basically gone.
The most vulnerable place in your home is your garage door.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And if you didn't have a new code garage door, or if you had not retrofitted with a bracing system, okay, either horizontal or vertical girts, as we call them, if you had not done that and the wind gets in the largest room in your home, you're toast.
You're screwed. One thing that we did have a problem with, and we have French doors in our house, so they're hurricane proof and or hurricane up to code. And there's a latch that goes into the bottom and the top to hold them. Well, my husband left. He said they're off balance and I can't get the bottom one in. He had a pry bar outside, forgot to get the pry bar. So Marie duct taped the doors and stood there. And I sat there for probably 3 hours because I could feel the wind going like this and pulling in and out. And I sat there and held them because I knew that if they compromised, you'd lose everything. You know, you get that suction there. But you brought up so many good points.
Keep the wind out, keep the house intact. It's as simple as that. So,
absolutely.
Listen,
all
guys,
right.
I got to run. I got to get going. And I had 4 phone calls while we were, but
we're chatting.
Listen,
tell them I appreciate them letting you on.
anything I can do, it's an absolute pleasure. We leave Colorado 2 weeks from today. I'm sorry, we leave home 2 weeks from today. We drive to Denver and we fly out early on Wednesday morning, the 19th. And then we will be down and around, in and out, over and under, seeing as many people as we can possibly see to see what they need or what we can do. I am taking a list and making up reservations for people to take us to lunch, but that's neither here nor there. But I'm kidding. But I told Vicky, I said, I'm pretty sure we could go the whole trip without having to buy a meal. But that's
right.
But
well,
anyway, we don't do it.
Let me know where you want to go. I'll have you and her for dinner one night.
We don't do it.
You won't be back. You won't be back.
But I can give them a gift certificate.
I have never done this job, trust me, for monetary gain. But certainly, anything that I have been able to contribute is my pleasure. And I've told people say, "Oh, don't ever." I'm not stopping. I'll be doing this probably when I can't walk anymore. But
Right.
nonetheless,
Well, I will
I'm
just say
teaching.
one thing for Wayne. Now, I've seen some posts, and with 30 some thousand people watching and following you, you're going to have some haters. Some people are going to
Oh,
say, "Oh, he doesn't know anything," and they'll make that comment because they can do that at the security of a keyboard, that and behind the screen. So,
well,
go ahead.
I've had people over the course of this recovery when I'm trying to help. Okay, who have unfriended me. And they're like, and I know they think, well, we're going to show him, we're going to put him off his high horse. I've got 2,000 people waiting to friend me, to be my
Yeah.
friend. You want to unfriend me?
Go
Bye.
for it.
Well,
Yeah.
but
Bye.
it's kind of like the governor said here. A lot of people are accusing, the officials of not being able to predict an unpredictable storm. I mean, they literally had Northport in square down into the middle of the eye. It never hit the eye.
Rich,
Never
everybody's an
did.
armchair quarterback.
Yeah, and so to sit there and say, "Oh, you missed it by this much," well, you're going to always miss it by that much. I mean, and there's no way to get around that. And
And
so, when somebody tells you it's a good thing, it's a good chance you should leave, or it's a good chance to be to be prepared for this. Don't take it with "Oh yeah, we'll worry about it."
Well, and
Imagine.
all it has to do is move a couple of inches, even in that trajectory thing, and it's going to hit a different thing. And are you a weather meteorologist that you can predict how the winds are going to be up above and the shear coming down to determine that? We're any of the experts can't do that because Mother Nature is fickle and she will do whatever she wants to do.
He will win every time.
Every
Every
single
time.
time.
So
And
listen, I
every
got to go.
hurricane is a little bit different. But I'll let you go, Wayne. I don't want you to, miss all those calls that you're going to be on
Listen,
MSNBC, I heard.
we want to make sure that the folks in Southwest Florida are ready for the extreme excitement. The President of the United States is coming to visit tomorrow. So you guys certainly glad you're not there. But I know the folks in Southwest Florida are just thrilled beyond imagination. So,
Well, I'm not going to get political because I'll tell you, if he brings his pocketbook and the federal government's ability to print money, we'll take it. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
so,
Yeah.
All right,
all
guys.
right.
Okay.
Y'all take care. Be safe. Call me anytime. Okay.
Thank you, Wayne.
Okay.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you,
guys.
Wayne.
Bye-bye.
All right. So, Marie, just to kind of tomorrow, I've got Chris May on. He called and said that he would be able to do tomorrow at 3:00. He is all about aluminum. He's a contractor. He's a local guy. We're going to talk about not only pool cages and guttering and things like that, but why it's important. He's been a long time contractor. Why it's important to do local. We went over last night, if you remember, when John was talking about the roofing guy, and he made him sign a contract, and the contract would have said, you have no rights in this negotiation ever again. I get your insurance, whatever I negotiate with the with the insurance company. Well, this guy wasn't even from the area. They signed their rights away, and who knows what that warranty would have been. And try to find the guy that has the warranty.
And that's why you do shop local and at your building industries association. Locally, yes. You got the Charlotte DeSoto Building Industry Association. You have the Sarasota Building Industry Association. The people that belong to those organizations, if there's any kind of problem, you can go to the organization and they will intervene for you.
And they're vetted. Even to belong to that, they are vetted.
Yeah, that you have to be a reputable company, and make sure that they have a business license in the county that you're at, or the city of Northport has a business license
Right.
process there. And we were a business owner locally, and let me tell you, all I had to do is pick up the phone or even go to their website, and I know a lot of people can't do that. But Rich, if I can do it, because we got power down the block from us, my
Right.
husband, yeah, I might be coming back to Port Charlotte tomorrow, depending on if we have electricity. I don't know if I'll have internet though. And I told my husband I really don't want to go because I have to do a lot of things before I leave. But for all the people out there, if you're having a really hard time with this, reach out to somebody. Don't sit there with the mental health issues going on. Charlotte Behavioral Health Center, they have processes. If there's abuse going on, both Charlotte and Sarasota County, Charlotte County has CARE, Center for Abuse and Rape Emergencies. And up in Sarasota, they have, and I'm looking at Rich because he lives in Sarasota County, they have their organizations there. There's a lot of people out there to help. And COADFL.org is in Charlotte County for getting some help. Also, FEMA, if you want to go to Elja Bean, the Bean out in Elja Bean, our station manager, RJ Malloy, is helping people fill out FEMA with applications,
right.
so they can get some help from there. And remember, if you've been flooded and you don't have flood insurance, you're going to have to go through FEMA because your regular homeowner's insurance won't cover flood. And
now we should just kind of discuss flooding is ground up. So if you've had situations in your house because you lost a roof, or if you've had a good friend that basically didn't lose a roof, he had a hole in one area of his roof, but he actually lost his soffits, and the wind and the water was blowing so hard it just kind of went in that way, and it destroyed lots of his ceiling and flooring and things. That's not flooding.
No, that's hurricane damage. And if you have a hurricane, if you have a hurricane rider on your policy, and I looked at mine while you guys were talking, and mine is 2% or 2,500, whichever is closer. So mine will be my fence will cost over 10,000 to replace. So it depends on. Mine was merely flesh wounds compared to others. And please take a lesson. If we would have had the flood surge, I may have been in trouble. But for the rest of you, we're so grateful at our home because we took the necessary precautions after Charlie. And our home survived with very, very, I wouldn't even think about normally turning in a claim on it because we could have had the soffits and stuff
done
on our own.
This is going to be a process, and like you said, for if you're sitting there and you've had a house destroyed or damaged, and you've lost your job maybe or not being able to work, and you're thinking, where am I going to get money to pay for this bill, or what am I going to do to feed my kids? There is hope out there, people, and there's help out there, and you need to reach out. Lord, my gosh, this is the time to reach out and ask for help. Don't sit there and think you got to face this kind of stuff alone. It's not.
And I called yesterday just for a lot of people, and I'm going to bring it up on my phone. If you need help, and what I'm talking about is help with some of the for Charlotte County Cares, and I'm going to give you a phone number here to call because in case you haven't signed up for all this stuff, I get notified about everything. Okay, there's prepared food over in Englewood that you can get. Utilities, boil water notice, our regular garbage pickup is on there. I'm looking for here's free disaster cleanup assistance available. And because my husband and I have some medical issues, and it's just really hard for us to do this. I called the number and I had to leave our message with them, and I don't know if it'll happen or not, but it's 1-800-451-1954. Again, the number is 1-800-451-1954, and it's help with tree removal, tarping roofs, and debris removal, and it's all free disaster cleanup assistance. So if you do have anything going on and you physically, truthfully can't do it yourself, don't put your pride aside and say, I'm not going to die trying to do this. I need help. Please,
Right.
Can you help us? Yeah.
Okay. Well, and listen, we're going to try to be back on. I just also had reconfirmation from Chris May, and listen, I'm going to try to get a couple of other, CDBIA members. I'm going to try to get Carolyn Huff on, who was the president of that. I'm also going to try to get some other contractors on to just give you some ideas of, I understand that you don't like a blue tarp on your roof, but listen, you do not need to go and get scammed to get a roof. These people will be working probably 7 days a week and because there's so much work to do. And listen, if you're listening from outside of town and you're a qualified roofer, let's not say I don't want you to come down, but sign up with another roofing company that is licensed, that has workers' compensation. I'm gonna warn everybody: don't let a soul on your property, and especially in a damaged area where they might get hurt working on your property. If they do not have workers' compensation and they get hurt, guess what? You're responsible. Now, there are scams out there of people that will say, oh, I got hurt on your property and I'm disabled for the rest of my life. They can sue you for everything that you have practically.
Right. And there are different businesses like after disaster, needs after restoration.
Right.
Those companies are designed for when you have a disaster to come in, and they will bring in, if they can't do it themselves, they'll hire in the contractors that can, and they can file your paperwork for you. Those are local ones in our area. So, and I think Right Way, there's a couple of other emergency ones that belong to some of the organizations. Check your chambers, check your Building Industries Association, check with the county, look at the county's website and make sure that they're vetted with them. And, you'll be safe. I would always hire somebody through the Building Industry Association because I know I belong to them. So I knew how they vetted people and took care of it. So
exactly. And so, and it's not one, I belong to BNI. And I would say, if you do not have an area, maybe you're not familiar with what CDBIA is. That's Charlotte DeSoto Building Industry Association. And then there's a Sarasota version of that. There's a Manatee version of that. There's a
the state, they're a state organization. So you could go to the state and see who's legit in that group too.
But you need some sort of vetting. And because, it's too easy to go out and get a card printed. It's too easy to sit there and do things to make yourself look like you know what you're doing. But, and I caution people, we witnessed it yesterday when we had a guy that was not a roofer that was portraying himself as a roofer. And just from his very limited amount of work he did, proved he was not a roofer.
Yeah, general contractor.
He was and basically signed his life away.
He was a general contractor out of Tampa. Came down and he had the roofing thing. And you got to be careful. I've seen where people are showing up at people's stores offering to do stuff, and they'll have a sign on, but no phone numbers, no license number. And if you're a licensed contractor, there should be a contract number on your information. That's a requirement that you list that. Just like if you're soliciting money, there's the state issues that to your organization. So
Exactly.
So Rich,
Yes.
you're gonna come down. Are you gonna fly down? Oh, you know what we didn't talk about? What about the airports? Are the airports Southwest Florida open?
I know Tricia had been looking. What was
I saw that at Punta Gorda.
Punta Gorda was damaged.
I don't know what if it's open or closed.
There's not. I mean, there was a post showing the damage at the Punta Gorda airport.
Right. I know Air Trek lost 4 of their planes, and that's our friend Dana Carr, his family's business and stuff, and they do a lot of the emergency air traffic, or you can rent a jet from them too.
Right.
Yeah.
So we don't know if that's open. I will try my best to start gathering the specifics like that. I do know that RSW is closed.
Yeah.
RSW, which is Fort Myers, is closed. So,
I think Sarasota is open though.
Yeah. I don't think there was any major issues in Sarasota.
No,
I know that we did lose the Venice Theater, which is a landmark, and that was sustained heavy damage. But I will tell you, most of Venice is open and operating as usual.
Well, we drove through it on Sunday to come up here, and there were lines at the gas station then, but a lot of things have changed since we left just two days ago. Driving up Sarasota, we saw damage going up, but the farther we got up on the north end of Sarasota, no. But some of my friends that live in Sarasota were out of power, and I have one of the friends that used to be the executive, or the anyhow, he used to be with the Sarasota Players up there, and he was still out of power. And that, it depends on where you are and how it affected you. But to be an armchair quarterback and to really guess that we live here, I've lived here 35 years, and I've watched how these storms move. Like we left for Irma because it was Category 5 coming in, and we were supposed to get a direct hit. So we left. It moved into Arcadia. Again, Arcadia. Which is how many miles, Rich, into the
about
state?
19 miles.
Is it only 19?
I thought it was like 30 from the Gulf Coast. It's probably 35, 70 as the crow flies. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because my girlfriend is there, and I can't get a hold of her. She lives in Arcadia.
I'm going to tell you right now. Peace River did exactly what the Mayaca River did, and they had to basically take the brunt of all that rainfall. And there were reports on Sunday there was not one road in the entire county that was passable. So if you imagine a county and none of the county was passable, there's no way. We're talking about 17. And if you remember, US 41 was shut down at the Peace River Bridge in Port Charlotte. Then we had I-75 shut down in Northport. So you basically had lost a lot of your north-south travel. And then all of a sudden, US 17 was flooded. Well, where were all these supplies that were coming down for our relief? How were they going to get here? Because there was no north-south way to get here. And so that kind of delayed things a little bit. It was just the worst-case scenario, I'll tell you.
Yeah, and I have a suggestion to all of you people out there. If you're trying to figure out how to get on a road, see where these little lines are. This is FL 511, and you can download the app. This is actually how we ended up coming up to Kissimmee, because if you look where all these red lines are, if I hit on them, and here's Arcadia here. Okay, flooding on State Road 72, both directions at Southwest Gator, tri-lane closed. This is getting in there. Major road damage. So the road is damaged and it's closed in both directions.
Yeah.
you keep on going here. This is just Arcadia, and to get into there, you could the different areas. We were gonna, because we usually take 17 all the way going up there, but let me tell you, it was not passable. You could not even consider going that way. And then on 75, it looks different now, but when we were going, 75 had 3 of the red marks. You couldn't get on that. 41 had a few that you couldn't get through. So, and if you couldn't get north of Sarasota, which we couldn't, you couldn't go. You couldn't leave. And that's something that, we've never seen this at all. That at least you couldn't go one way or the other. And
right. I'm sorry, I had dogs barking.
Yeah, I see that.
Report one thing, and if you can verify it on there, up until this afternoon, 75 at Sumter. So basically, Sumter was not an off-ramp that was available or an on-ramp to 75. But as far as I'm understanding now, Sumter and 75 is open for business. So that is
it looks like it is open, but River Road, in fact, when we were coming up, River Road was closed.
Yes.
And they had just closed it, and I saw the pictures of it, and right here it's saying it's closed due to flooding. It looked like a river in there, and I go, "Is that why they call it River Road?"
Yes. Yeah. Well, it does parallel the river, but about a mile inward. But yes, it's ridiculous how bad it was, and things are getting better, but they're not going to be just like that back to normal. So
so just for everybody, if you want to see what the freeway the road situation is and you're trying to get to someplace, download the FL 511 and you'll be able to get this map, and it does pretty close. They update it really closely. If they close or open a road, they're doing that. They're putting it on here. But as you can see down in Cape Coral and Fort Myers and out on the islands and that, how many red marks are there? You can't get there. You can't get to these places because those roads are shut down.
I'm not trying to be a downer here, but I can't even imagine, and I'm working hard to try to get people in the insurance agencies, but they're so busy right now.
They don't have
know
time.
That's going to be. But we had a crisis here this year prior to this, with insurance rates going up sky high. I can't even comprehend what they're going to be after this.
Well, we had St. John's originally, and they went bankrupt and canceled. So it went to the state, and I'll show you here. It's called Slide. And our insurance agent, here, I'll take this off so you guys can see this. Our insurance agent got a hold of us, and he said, Slide is the state program. It's with the state. You don't want to be with it in case you have an emergency that you have to do things. So we ended up going in, and we have Frontline. We went with what our agent had for his, and they even have a deductible year that you can have it lower premium if you don't have any claims with 5 years, and that it actually goes down. And I said, well, I'll take that, and I want to pay the extra for having it reduced, not knowing that's not going to happen right now because we'll be having a claim. But you know what? It's okay. And for all of those companies, they may end up going bankrupt over this. Looking at I'm looking at Fort Myers, and thank God. I mean, I didn't want that for Fort Myers to happen to them, but I know what it would have done for us in Charlotte County if we would have got that storm surge as bad as they were predicting for us. They got it south of us.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not I don't know all the pros and the cons, but for a lot of years with the health insurance agencies, they've said portability. So, being able to put, instead of it being a Florida insurance agency or even like, Allstate, there is a Florida group only they basically take premiums out of Florida, and so when they base their business model on this is the premiums we get and this is the payments we get, if you're not making a profit, they will let back out of Florida. Well, I think it almost needs to be a national insurance thing where these companies, even though they're private, can do this in a national grouping kind of a thing, because they're not doing that now with health insurance, and I don't think they're doing it with property and casualty. I could be wrong there, but if you're looking at only your gains and losses out of Florida, well, great. I understand that you're not going to make a profit here in the next few years in Florida because we are a hurricane area, but just the same way, you might not be able to get or earthquake damage in California.
Yeah. One of the things too, and I went to a seminar with Charlotte County. I've been involved in a lot of things in my life, and one of them was they had people from the USF out of Gainesville talking about where the water level will be by the year 2050. And they are predicting our water will be up to almost Arcadia at that time. That where we are will probably be waterfront property, if not under. And that's why Sunseeker Resort in Charlotte County built up 9 feet higher than what was originally planned because of the anticipation of the water levels rising. Well, looking at the damage done right now, there's a lot of new waterfront property out there because they lost some of that through the hurricane. If anybody looks at Sanibel and any of those islands, and we did a timeshare exchange. I was saying last night, RCI was kind enough to do an immediate one for us and got us in up here in Kissimmee. But our timeshares on Fort Myers Beach across the road from the beach itself. And I said to my husband, I think we're on waterfront property now because imagine that beach has moved back,
right?
So, for anybody out there that's never experienced anything like that, like we've been going through, Rich has not been here. He's been armchairing it up in North Carolina.
I really have, but yeah, go ahead.
Anyhow, for any of the people out there, you've been through storms. Any people around the world, you've been through storms. You've been through maybe high wind storms, tornadoes, blizzards, and that. Just put it in perspective. It is the same, except much longer. And when you lose utilities, I think it's easier to lose our utilities here than in a blizzard where it's freezing cold and your pipes will freeze and may break and you're trying to keep warm. And because I was talking to my sister and her sub pump goes down when they lose electricity, and we don't have basements here. So we're not worried about that. But, everybody has, no matter where you are in the world, you have weather issues. That's something we have not controlled, although my alien friends may have. My ancient aliens. I'm an ancient alien person.
Yeah, okay.
Just in case anybody cares.
Okay. Well, I think that's just the fact, a blizzard might last for a while, but typically blizzards do not last with 150 mile an hour winds. If you get a 50, 60 mile an hour blizzard, that's a big blizzard. And you're going to get a lot of drifting, and I fully understand that. But you can dig out of a blizzard drift. You have a hard time digging out of your house not being there anymore, like you're on Fort Myers Beach. I mean, there is nothing to dig out of, even though there's probably 3 feet of sand everywhere now. But whenever you have the amount of wind that these survivors, and you can only say is surviving, the amount of wind, the amount of rain, the amount of flooding that they had for the length of time. Wayne talked about over in Francine. Francine was 120 mile an hour top level hurricane. It was not 150, almost 155 with 190 mile an hour gusts. It wasn't that bad. So yes, it was going slow. I remember it, but I'm going to tell you, the people of Southwest Florida survived a major catastrophe. Survived, and that's it's kind of like a time stamp date in your life. You're always going to remember the 28th of September 2022. If you live that, it's going to be like 9/11 to you.
Oh, absolutely.
That kind of experience.
Okay, I'm showing on the screen here Sanibel Island and hurricane, and this is thanks to NPR.org. If you're looking here and looking at the destruction here, right here, it shows a Sanibel Causeway. This is how they got onto the island. Look at the destruction here, and look at the marina. With all those boats there, hopefully
and can I say one thing, that causeway, that's one breach out of 4.
Yeah.
There's 4 just like that. And let me just say, rebuilding that is not going to be a 2-month deal. There might not be, because again, you're now talking about rebuilding a causeway. That's going to take tons and tons and tons of time. Then redesigning, you might be 2 years before you're going to get back on that island via a car. And you just, you sit there and you think about those kinds of things in Southwest Florida. We were talking about, last night with John, we were talking about mold, right? So you want to get in there and dry out your house. These people are not going to have any opportunity to do that. Those $1 million homes, if they've got any damage whatsoever that's allowing intrusion of rain, those houses are going to be torn down.
Oh, absolutely.
You're just not going to be able to get to a point where within 2 years you're going to have the manpower there to do all of this stuff. So I feel really bad for them, and Wayne talked about all of our German people that come down here in the wintertime.
The visitors,
Not this year.
Yeah.
And maybe not next year.
Well, and I look at I looked at the new canals that they're talking about. Sanibel Beach is eroded as a storm surge cut into inlets into the island, and it's unknown what happened to the nesting turtles. And if you look and you see all these lines of canals going in, that's by Mother Nature, and they won't be repairing those, I don't think. Do you, Rich?
No. I don't know. I do know that during Hurricane Charlie, there used to be a Captiva Island. Now there's a Captiva Island and a North Captiva Island.
Yeah.
And there was about a 200-yard break there. They did not try to repair that. There will be probably some, but it's kind of like that causeway. I would not be a bit surprised now if they wouldn't build a bridge there instead of a causeway kind of a thing where you're going to dam that water. I don't know.
Yeah, and I'm looking here. These are the buildings at Sanibel that didn't fare well in the storm surge and it was the storm surge that got them here. If you take a look,
you look at the big one in the center, and then you look just a little top level of that, and you see a pad over there. There was a building there too.
Yeah, and you see a roof over here just by itself.
Yeah, just by itself.
Just sitting on the ground there, so that's somebody's roof that came flying off, and you look over here, and those are roofs. Those are roofs off of buildings, and where are the buildings? They're probably looking at a lot of them destroyed. And when I'm looking at the people that, they're thinking that they may have a home to go back to, and you didn't take things with you, and a lot of those people had to be evacuated out of there because they didn't leave. And like Wayne had said, you know, they didn't know it was supposed to hit there until hours before. So don't be armchair quarterbacking and saying, well, why didn't they evacuate? Well, we were ordered evacuation, but we were supposed to get hit. You know,
Well, let me tell you something.
And we did. We were in the eye wall.
They gave them 24 hours.
And
every single person on that island could have got off of that causeway in 24 hours. The ones that chose not to just decided, like I said, either through a callous nature of, oh, I've been through this before, it's never hit me. It's an inconvenience to go and to evacuate. It is. We're not used to inconveniences. We live in a very soft society. We don't want inconveniences. And whenever you've done that 2 or 3 times before, one of these hurricanes had never hit here since Charlie.
Right.
That was 20 some years ago. But yet we've had cause to, whenever Hurricane Katrina came up, it kind of skirted the bottom part of Florida, right? But it didn't cause because it just kept going out west, and it never really just went right up the coast. And Katrina devastated, the Bay St. Louis area of Mississippi and all that. But imagine people hearing every year, okay, it's time to evacuate and get yourself together. Sooner or later, you say, nah, especially if it never hits you. Nah, I'm not going to do it. And that's just nature. That's just human nature that you're going to take I'm going to take a chance it doesn't hit me.
One of the things after Hurricane Charlie, which was 18 years ago, Friday the 13th in August, it was on a Friday the 13th that Hurricane Charlie hit. And one of the things that I noticed, because I've lived in Charlotte County all the time that I've lived in Florida, and that's 35 years, Team Punta Gorda, the communities of the county came together, and in Punta Gorda, that was the hardest hit, a group of citizens came together and formed a group called Team Punta Gorda, and they are the ones that advocated for all the different changes that were made. And it's, I haven't been there, I haven't seen pictures of what it looks like right now, but it came back really strong. It's actually one of the nicest places to go visit. They have 18 miles of walkable bicycle riding paths and dog friendly. And it's just a really, really nice, unique place to go, to be a part of. And I'm looking at here, and I know a lot of people like to go to Sanibel. Well, there's another group of islands up above Sanibel and Captiva. You have Cayo Costa, which is, people don't live there. They do have, it's a state park. Yeah, and you can go stay out there. They did have cabins out there, and you could camp out there. And then the next island up is Little Gasparilla and Gasparilla Island, where Boca Grande is. And that's one of my more favorite places because it's more quiet than these other places that are touristy. And I do know the one restaurant on the water got obliterated, and they do have a lot of damage there, but some of the things made it. And the Bushes actually was the island that they would always go to and stay, because I think General Schwarzkopf has a place out there.
Well, the DuPonts, and there's a lot of rare, very wealthy families that have compounds out on that island. And like you said, the Bushes are out there. But I think since Papa Bush passed away, it's not as big of an issue because he used to go and spend most of January there, right?
Well, right. And they owned the Texas Rangers when it was called the Texas Rangers, and they did their spring training in Charlotte County. That's where they came, 2 miles from my home. And
So you would sit there but let's just say this. I mean, I don't care if you are a rich person or a poor person, devastation is devastation and people can feel it. Now, whether that's their most, I will tell you this, most of the people that have the big compounds, that's not their major home. That's
no,
not their, one of their primary residence. Wow. I don't know who you are, Wilson. Somebody called me named Wilson. I'm thinking the Tom Hanks movie. I'm going,
oh,
why
right,
is
with the volleyball. Yeah.
well, it showed a picture of a ball. I don't have it on the. I hung up on him, but anyway, it's still devastating because believe it or not, there's a lot of service people that live out there too, because these people have not only gardeners and those kinds of things, but they couldn't afford to live far away, and so a lot of them have little places on there. They got wiped out. I mean, they showed pictures, and it's devastating in some of those areas. Now,
Oh,
it is what it is. I mean, hopefully they're insured. A lot of people that live on the river or the water that way. Now, I'm not saying everyone, but a lot of people. You go to like Casey Key, and you see these Oprah Winfrey sized mansions because she has a place out at Casey Key.
oh, she does. I didn't know that.
Those people pay cash for those, and they probably are self-insured. Most of them are. It's what I understand from talking to a lot of the.
Yeah, Stephen King has a place out there too.
Yeah,
yeah.
and so you've got people that can afford it, and so it's not a devastating thing to them. It's just a dent in their wealth, I guess, if you have a destroyed house. But there are people that live along the coastline in Inglewood Beach, and and you say, oh well, they live at the beach, they must be rich. No, I mean,
No,
they might
that's
have that might have been what they sold or bought whenever they retired, and they came down and had a Airbnb as part of it, and that's just where they lived, and that's how they get a little bit of extra income. I mean, there's tons and tons and tons of people like that, or they bought a little hotel and they run it in their retirement or early retirement. There are a lot of people in those areas that are like that. They're not all just rich Republicans that just deserve to suffer. So,
yeah.
So anyway, listen. It's after 5 o'clock.
Yeah, right. And we got to get going. I got to do some real work. No.
Yes.
yeah.
So
yeah.
listen, Northport is still an issue. I'm pretty sure Port Charlotte and certain areas are. Not everybody has electricity yet. Not everybody has internet yet. So if you do have that, be mindful and maybe see if you can't help those people out. I've had people that have posted out here, hey, does anybody have a shower that I can take a shower at? Maybe open up your home to a family, let them take a shower.
Yeah.
Maybe do a load of clothes for them. We're talking a week. Maybe their clothes are dirty and they would like to just feel clean once.
I brought all my dirty clothes with us. I said, gather up everything dirty in this house. We're bringing it with. So, yeah.
You're too much, Marie. Hey, but there's always things you can do to help. If your power's back on and you happen to have a generator. I know whenever, my power came back on, a friend of mine he lives in Port Charlotte. He still doesn't he still doesn't have power. I said, well, come get my generator. And so, he came back, and I also had a small, it's a portable, not a room. I'm not a window type, but a portable AC unit. And he hadn't had any AC since before the storm. And I said, well, take my AC unit and my generator and just, whenever if you run it into the ground, you run it into the ground. I mean, but I'd rather them be comfortable than me worried about having an extra of anything.
Right. So. Exactly. And we had a neighbor come over said, we're staying at my son's that has a full generator, whole house one. She said, I think my husband got a hold of our nephew to borrow it to him, but if he doesn't want it, do you guys want to use it until you get power back? And I said, absolutely. And she came back and she said, I'm sorry, it's gone. But I said, that's okay, because this is when you get to meet your neighbors too.
Yes.
I never get a chance to actually see my neighbors. And this is at times like this. I remember Charlie, I got to meet who the neighbors were. And we have a whole different set of neighbors now. And I've been getting to meet who our neighbors are. And that's kind of in our day and world and stuff. I know we got to get going, because you got to get going and I got to get going. Thank you, everybody, for listening to Rich's show, Southwest Florida Live.
Actually, radio from the road, but I'm stuck up here in North Carolina. I'm actually going to stay in North Carolina for a while. I'm letting my house be used by somebody who lost a house. And so I've got an RV that I can stay in. My wife and I were happy up here. It only got down to 46 degrees. I'm still kind of deciding why that is. It was supposed to get down to 34 degrees. And maybe I think the people in the weather service just messed up or something. But it's nice and cool. I'll start taking pictures of the fall leaves because they're changing up here.
Yeah, beautiful. I'm going to play us an outgoing song that I do for one of our other show hosts. And this, to the audience out, you can make a difference.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So I'm going to say, have a good night. I will be back tomorrow. Marie, hopefully you can help.
Okay. Bye-bye, everybody. Ooh.